All right, we did it. John
Rock
Willis,
and roll.
Bachagalupe,
That's the one.
Bachagalupe, the
There you
one and
go.
only legendary John Willis,
Yeah.
with whom I've been privileged to have maintained a relationship since 2009. So we're going
Yeah.
on closer to 20 years than not at this point, which is
J-
lucky
Java
for
two
me. But
days.
yeah, that's still one of the best experiences I've ever had. They
That was
just
great. Yeah. And
yeah,
we met. They remember they took us out to. So it was all Java, and cloud was coming out, and I was sort of like, I
yeah.
guess, in a short list of people who actually could bullshit enough about cloud. They picked me to come over, and I remember going to that dinner where we were just getting, Bulgarian brandy and food and belly dancers, and like it was just the most insane
It's a
thing.
lot. Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah,
But
it
also
was.
there was this because it's in Bulgaria. Bulgaria, at the time, perhaps incorrectly, I got the impression. Again, this is 2009. I got the impression that there weren't a lot of Java conferences with a lot of foreign international speakers. So they were so just endlessly kind to all of us. They
Oh,
made
they
us
were
feel.
brilliant. They were brilliant.
The
And
audience, the organizers, everything was just.
you
Yeah,
helped me because I was babe. I didn't really understand the Java ecosystem, and I don't
I
think I
still
even
don't.
understand it today. Yeah, but you're like, that guy is really smart. You should talk to him. Go talk
Yeah,
to that guy. It was
yeah.
kind of cool to have you sort of guide me through the. If you really want to understand what's going on, definitely sit down with this guy or
I
that
mean,
guy or that
worst
woman.
part is that everything I would have told you in 2009 no longer holds true. Isn't that weird?
There we go. Let's go. Well,
Oh, that's
that's um, well, I guess, again, not being in your community as much, I'm sort of considered, I guess, you had asked me what's the best way I guess I'm still the DevOps guy, but it's sort of like is an in between of, there was a time in my life I was the IBM mainframe assembler guy. Then I
yeah,
was, then I became, a bunch of stuff, and I was the cloud guy. And then I became the DevOps guy. And then I became
right.
the DevSecOps guy. And then I did a whole stint with DevOps Automated Governance, which is a fascinating. And I guess now I'm sort of an AI
Yeah.
person, but I
Well,
mean
aren't we
I
all?
am. Yeah, we are. I guess I focus a little on sort of things I always sort of tend to focus on is what is the organizational behavior traits that happen, and what are the things, all the things that sort of the soft side of the DevOps, right? The sort of
Right.
organizational design, the organizational discussions, the behaviors. And so I'm really fascinated about not just sort of AI and DevOps, but like the boundaries of agentics, and that's not really where I want to go today. But just and I've written a couple of books. Let's get that
Yeah,
out of the way.
dude.
I
Oh,
was
so let's be.
Yeah,
You're being a little bordering on
yeah.
absurdly modest here. You wrote. I mean, I know about your. I remember you told me about those
Oh yeah, IBM Red
red
books. Yeah, yeah.
red books, right, for IBM, and those you did like a bunch of those. But then you did Beyond the Phoenix Project, so a
That's right.
successor to the Phoenix Project with its author, Gene Kim.
Oh, Gene. Yeah.
Uh, that's an amazing. I mean, the Phoenix Project is like you, just sort of one of the pillars of modern software society. It is, and so to be able to have that ability to analyze it, he could have kept that for himself. He could have written it himself,
You
but he
know,
chose you.
I, I
There's
have
a
an
good reason
interesting
there.
story on the Phoenix
Yeah.
project, which is I met Gene was invited to the first DevOps day in US that we ran. I was on a panel with him, and I remember getting off the panel, and he'd done a ton of work on invisible ops and ops infrastructure, and I knew who he was, but I didn't know who he was when I was on the panel with him. So I get off the panel, and my good friend Damon Edwards says, because at one point there's a question about me, and Gene compliments me, and I get off the panel, and Damon Edwards, my good, he says, you know who that was? I said, I don't know, panel guy number 4, And he's like, no, it was Gene Kim. I'm like, holy crap. And I went looking for him. He was gone. And then we met at South by Southwest. But here's the point. He was finishing up the Phoenix project.
Right.
And he wasn't sure DevOps was a thing. And I told him,
Wow.
and he's quoted this. I said, Gene, for us operations people, it's like that lighthouse that we've
Yeah.
been looking for to come back to shore to like figure out, like at that point, it's messy now, but it was messy back then too.
Oh, way
The
worse.
divorce between, or the the sort of mismatch between ops and dev. Anyway, so yeah, and then we wrote the DevOps Handbook together, and then
Right.
Book about Edward Deming, which is sort of which again goes
Survival is optional.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then what I'd love for your listeners to check my Rebels of Reason, which is probably one of the better comprehensive, readable versions of the history of AI. And that was a blast to write. And and it goes through, back to the first neural network. It includes how Boolean logic was how important Boolean logic was to McCulloch and Pitts, which became to Rosenblatt. Again, I go through all that to Turing, just a simple on and off.
Yeah.
Think about how important that was ultimately for computing, but certainly for, where we are today. So there you go. That's me.
That doesn't even do just. I could go on and we could spend all day, but we do have, unfortunately, limited time because I have another meeting. But Gene Kim, he's been on this show, and you have as well. So if people want to go listen to an interview with him, you search the catalogs. We're talking years ago. This probably is 2019. It's before BC, right? Before COVID. And and then so now you've got a book. You said it, Rebels of Reasoning. When did you publish that? How did I miss it?
Came out last year. It was incredible. So I when I wrote my book about Dr. Edward Deming, I decided to adopt this style, very like a Michael Lewisian style to write about technology.
Yeah.
Only our technology we're more familiar with instead of sabermetrics or Moneyball. But so that's what I did. I fell in love with that style of writing where you're telling a narrative to experts and hopefully they enjoy it. And then my mother-in-law is my other target reader. Like, can she read it? And I did that with the Deming book, reasonably successful. And then, the goal is, could I actually tell a history of AI in that so somebody who's an expert in AI would enjoy it and say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And my mother-in-law would be like, wow, that was great. And I think all indication is that I succeeded. So it's a sort of, how would Michael Lewis write a book about the history of AI?
Would the book lend itself to an audio book?
It does. Only, to future writers, don't self-publish unless you're incredibly organized. So all my other books were published by Gene Kim's IT Revolution, and I decided to take a shot at self-publishing this one. And there are so many things that if you're not an incredibly organized person, and so on the list that I still haven't gotten is the audio. It will definitely. In fact, I'm experimenting with. AI is just getting close enough, because what IT Revolution does, or professional publishers, they don't mess around when it comes to audio. I mean, it's their brand. And so, when I checked 6 months ago, when I was publishing the book, AI wasn't ready for it. And right now I've got a decision point. Do I use professional audiobook author, or can I use 11 Labs? And so I'm literally in the throes. Hopefully I'll have that.
Why not just read it yourself?
Yeah, there's that's a whole nother bailiwick too. Yeah, it's there's something about professionalism and cadence, and So anyway, let's enough about me.
Well, so I am. We should talk about the self-publishing thing. I have found the opposite experience true. I'm not particularly organized, but my books don't lend themselves to audiobooks. They're code heavy, so I never had that problem.
Right.
So fair enough. But nonetheless, I found self-publishing to be the most gratifying way I know to write a book.
That's probably. I mean, again, I think the type of book is important. Because you're right. If it's very highly technical, Kelsey Hightower writing a book about Kubernetes, right?
Right.
Certainly self-published that, right? But if you're talking about a meta story about the history of AI, I don't know. I'll reassess, but. You have to be this incredible workhorse on promoting. Here's the key. I change genres a lot. Right now, I'm writing a book I'm working on a book about the history of quantum computing, for example.
Yeah.
And which is difficult because you actually have to spend about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years on your prior book.
Yeah.
And so if you don't do that, so again, it just gets whereas a self,
Yeah,
anyway. The thing I want to get to, which I think I saw you present the other day, and
I'm
you
so
didn't think you
sorry.
did. No, man,
No
you
refunds.
like
No refunds.
no refunds. Darn, I already put the chatbot, the Josh Long chatbot said I could get a refund. The but the I
It's good to see you, by the way.
you're yeah, no, it was great to see you, my friend. You are incredible. I mean, I know you know talk about being hard. I mean, you that's one of the things is your humility in like as you present like. But here's the thing I saw, right? And there's all this discussion right now about, they don't use, people don't use the word no code, but like for a better, in lack of a better way to describe it, this idea that agents will drive most of the code. I'm seeing a lot of important people say I don't look at code anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
those are sort of like interesting questions to dive into. But I'm watching you, in the IDEs, working with Spring, and sort of your mastery of this is, I don't know. I watch a lot of presentations, and there's something about live demos and all that, but I'm sitting there going, like, what does somebody have to learn to be Josh?
Oh God, aim
And
higher, please.
no, let's knock it off. Like you're pretty incredible. I mean, like I watch you, and I'm not just a neophyte dope that
No,
doesn't know
quite the
technology.
contrary.
And I watch you and your ability to sort of like, oh yeah, and even for somebody who says, hey, you forgot, oh yeah, look what I did, and your ability to sort of pull out of thin air like what type of object you're supposed to use and all that, and it just sort of like seemed to me like a lot of knowledge context, yeah. And so I was thinking like, I knew you were in a hurry to leave, and I wanted to like take you out for drinks. I'm like, okay,
Oh,
shoot,
I'm
here
so
are all my
sorry.
questions. But
So for people who don't know, we were at the Atlanta Java User Group a few days ago, and then after the Java User Group presentation, where I was lucky enough to speak, I had to bolt for the airport and catch a flight to Texas, where I was for 2 days, and now I'm home sick with a
there you
cold.
go.
So okay, I missed you, my friend.
So
It was really great to see you.
no, it
Hopefully
was
I didn't
great
give you the
seeing.
cold.
No, yeah, hopefully not. But I guess the question I think it sort of arises, and then you made some really strong points about, it's like Java is the enterprise, and that there's no question. That is
Yeah.
that it's undeniable, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I love how you sort of make fun of the other languages, and that's fun too. But
you kind of have to.
but
They're not doing a good job yet, and they can be poked at until they fix it. That's
I
fine.
totally agree. And then that's the question though. Like if you're sort of 25 years old right now and you're drinking the Kool-Aid on AI for
Yeah.
better or worse, I mean, what does this all mean for like, sort of a traditional software engineering and like how do you become Josh Long or your equivalent, whoever you think is the sort of the person that amazes you
Well,
in a
you.
world where no when it comes to coding, right? Like I'm not even saying that.
Dr. Venkat Subramaniam.
Okay, there you go. So like how do you become that, or do you need to become that? How do you become that? What is the place of Java in this AI native world?
Hey, okay. Well, this turned into an interview with me. I'll dump my thoughts quick, and then you go. Okay, because I'm much more interested in your thoughts. I saw a thing last year that basically suggested that people's estimates of the productivity implied from AI was greatly overblown. So people actually ended up taking longer by using AI than not. And similarly, I saw another thing last year, and again, I don't have my sources on me right now.
Sure, no worries.
I saw another thing last year that suggested that AI was most useful in the hands of very senior people. And so that is to say, if you're a young person and you don't know what you don't know, then you're just going to be led into a grass field that is far away from where you want to be as you can get, right? And I kind of find that as well, from personally, anecdotally, from my experience, I do happen to have some proficiency with Java and Spring. I wouldn't say I'm particularly great at it, but I do have more than the average bear. And so my code, I find the actual experience of using AI quite dissatisfying for Java and Spring because it gives me answers that are inferior to what I could just do by myself. On the other hand, in all the other categories for which I'm sort of obviously less qualified, AI pulls me up instead of drags me down, right? And so I find it's kind of the great equalizer for the people for whom they already have a proficiency, or that already have a proficiency, I wonder if they're going to find that I wonder if they're going to find that it is a drag, or at the very least that it needs to be controlled. And I've also found that to be true as well, right? There's a ongoing back and forth right now in the sort of agentic space, which is, hey, right? Like there's a paper from Microsoft that just came out like the last couple of days. Did you see that? Basically suggesting that a well-controlled single call to the AI model gives you better results than a chatty back and forth, right? But I also know that like a year ago, there was some other thing that suggested the opposite. That is that these models, especially the smaller private ones, don't lead to a good result if you give them too much context. If you give them too many tools to call, too much context data, too much chat, too much stuff in one overloaded single shot call, they give you a bad result. And so the best way to refine that result is to be more granular and lead to a sort of specific outcome. I find that, yeah, if you know what you're doing and you can drive it towards a particular goal, then you'll get a better result. And that, whether you do that through coercing it along a path over multiple steps, or you do it by being very, very granular and specific about the tools that you give it and the context that you give it, and hoping it'll do it in a single shot. Either way, expertise is important here, right? Expertise of what the outcome, what good looks like, is important. Overall, net, I don't think for young people especially, right? I'm still privileged enough that I can specialize. I can be just a back end person, despite decades of people telling me you have to be full stack, right? I mean, it's just never panned out, right? You don't have to be full stack to do anything useful. In fact, quite the contrary. You're less suited for a particular goal. Like they say, specialization is for insects. But you know what they witnessed emerging from the nuclear bombs and various tests? Bugs, So it's not a bad idea. Anyway, that's my sort of general sense of it.
No, I think you're, again, there's no easy answers here, right? Like, because we're in this firestorm right now. I mean, like, even like things that we talk about that we are experienced from last year, either research or our own personal experience last year, it's just completely different than what it is
totally
this year, right? Like, and certainly will be tomorrow, right? But I think I find when I spend a lot of time, like one of the things I love about AI more than anything is my ability to research.
Yeah.
And especially when I'm writing stuff, like even quantum computing, I wouldn't even have dared. In fact, one of the things my sort of like, sort of holy grail in Deming book was to be able to explain Schrodinger's cat to my mother-in-law, right? And I think I nailed it, right? And then I got a lot deeper in the AI book, and I felt more confident that I could write a book about the history. Like the sort of the holy grail in that book was to explain, neural network, the Jan LeCun's MNIST database, right? Like to my mother-in-law. Like, how does that work?
Can I put you on the spot?
Sure. Depends. Wait a minute. No. Okay. Go ahead.
Would you please explain Schrodinger's cat to me?
Okay. Well, do you want the one that's going in my quantum book? The idea, it's all based down to like this idea of in quantum there's a superposition, right? So that sort of one of the general theories is that, and again, I'm not an absolute expert here, but the layman's explanation is that so basically it's a thought experiment, like no cats are harmed in this experiment, and there's sort of a radioactive material, and then and it's sort of it breaks, but we don't know when the cat is dead or alive, and so the only way to know is through observation.
Observe it.
Yeah, and so it's when you open the sort of the box, that's when you find out it's dead or alive, and so before then it's in a superposition, so it's dead and alive.
Right.
And to go a little deeper on that, you are definitely putting me on the spot. But
sorry, we don't have to. But
no, the idea of a wave function, that it really is sort of like it's not it's not sort of the sort of the quantum coin flip is the best. When the coin is flipping in the air, it's not really in it's in a superposition.
Right.
It's not till it lands on the floor of the table is
Right.
it head or tails. And so that's the equivalent of observation. What gets real freaky is the whole idea about observation and consciousness. And so one of the things I found, this is crazy stuff, is the real question isn't whether it's dead or alive until you open the box. The question might be, by one interpretation, that it doesn't exist until you open the box.
So wait, if the tree falls in the forest,
if you didn't hear the sound,
then it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah.
What?
That's an insane thread of quantum consciousness and what is consciousness applied observe. And again, that could be another. All right, so let's go back to the.
Okay, sorry. I thank you, because I kind of understood the first tranche of that. When you that first description, I got that. I just didn't understand the implications because I am not smart. So that was very appreciated, my friend. Okay, if anybody was watching this, you can't say you didn't get anything. This is the one episode per year that we do that has nutritional value.
Well, and by the way, I do a way stronger job of this stuff in my 2 books too. So that, because you did catch me a little off guard, right?
Sorry,
but no worries. Yeah, no, it was good. I held my own. I think I just. One of my problems is having so much knowledge in a horizontal spectrum. I rely more and more of my vector database of all my stuff to be able to say quickly, what did I say in this book? What did I say in this paper?
Right.
But anyway, for research, I think it's the same thing. I find sometimes the simple things that I want to do. People talk about, why aren't you using Claude Bot? Why aren't you doing? And I am, and I'm trying it out. But certain things I find just sort of a linear approach to doing research with AI.
Yeah.
I tend to find out, if I start doing too exotic with the agents, they'll produce oh, wow, I just waited, 10 minutes for that to happen. And that was dead wrong. Or I could have spent 30 minutes of just iterating that process myself. So I totally agree with you on but I get the one of the questions that nags me is, this comes up, you've heard the thing about Jevons paradox, right? You've heard that, right? Jevons was a sort of economist in the coal, a British economist. And the idea of Jevons paradox is that there's always a sort of idea that when we build these sort of new services or new solutions, things are going to diminish and they actually increase. The abstraction actually creates more abundance. More people can use, more people. His original economic discussions were around coal.
Wait, so you're saying the more you abstract, the more force multipliers, the more likely people are.
That's right. The more because you're sort of opening up the ability for everybody to use. So there's a people are using the Jevons. We use Jevons products a lot in sort of early days of DevOps, and if you can automate CI/CD, if you can do all this, it's not going to reduce headcount. It's going to create more code. It's going to create more delivery, more service, right?
Is that kind of like data gravity? Do you remember?
Yeah, data gravity is interesting. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, but that was a whole interesting side story that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is sort of again, I think the one I like the best is if you go back to when they started Blockbuster videos and video stores were going to kill the theaters. But the truth was, after that, theaters became 24, 30 plex theaters, right? It just created more ability. But it's being used a lot in the discussion of AI right now in terms of AI is not going to sort of eliminate coders. It's going to create more coders. Now, the question and that is, history has sort of shown that pattern. The question I have, because what the assumption is, you wind up doing other things. You spend less time on the mundane things, and you can do more sort of effective value-adding stuff, right?
Right.
But what if AI encroaches on the value-adding stuff, right? There's layers here. In other words, the ability to write code maybe takes the people like us, you and I, to a level where we're better on describing compliance and guidance and policy.
Yeah.
To these things. But what if AI encroaches on that? is there a point of which the sort of Jevons paradox doesn't hold true in this sort of virtual domain of things that are bits and bytes, where all the evidence has been based on physical? And I don't know if I'm making sense right now.
You are right now. I don't think right now. Speaking
right now, totally okay. Yeah.
20 February 2026. I saw a thing. I saw a tweet the other day, and I think I retweeted it. But forgive me if I didn't, and I don't remember the source because again, the brain's not so good these days. So anyway, the tweet was basically, don't act like don't pretend that we didn't have force multipliers before. Because we had frameworks, we had smarter compilers, we had smarter languages, we had abstractions, we had libraries. Like this isn't the first time developers have had the opportunity to move up the value stack, right?
Sure.
And I don't know what the implication of that. Maybe they'll just continue. Maybe that I don't know if I forget the ending. Maybe actually the ending contradicts your point, but I feel like it was compounding your point.
That's a great point. That helps me too, because I'm like in this, like, I'm like even reluctant to discuss this out loud for fear of getting just jumped on and screamed at, and like, how dare you commit the fact that, so I'm treading very lightly. But no, that's a good point, right? Spring is a great example.
Yeah.
Of an abstraction that created abundance.
And got more abstract, by the way. Like Spring today is definitely not the same thing as it was when you and I first met in Bulgaria 17 years ago.
Well, I think what's, again, in lieu of this being an advertisement for Spring, which is not terrible, which...
By the way, I put your book up there. Is that the right place to get it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool.
I want people to go get it. I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
Rebels of Reason. It's actually, you in your own way, it's Rebels of Reason, The Long Road from Aristotle to ChatGPT and AI's Heroes Who Kept the Faith. That is an awesome title. Way better than just Rebels of Reason, which is cool as hell, by the way.
Yeah.
But the longer one is like, goosebumps.
No, in short, the idea is that, that it starts with sort of formulated logic.
Yeah.
It gets to sort of George Boole, who's sort of like, and a lot of industries, but Boole sort of turns that into a mathematical formulaic. Ada Lovelace goes ahead and puts in sort of a pattern of programming. Turing basically says, she is. The Michael Lewison version tells stories that she was a gambler. Her father was Lord Bryan. Lord Bryan, like her father wanted her to be a housewife, and the mother like sort of like hid to push her towards mathematics. It just, these are the kind of stories I love telling, not the stories that I'll tell you another. So anyway, then you get to Turing, who says, well, I think this could be a machine. Right.
Yeah.
And then if you follow the neural network, you got this guy named Walter Pitts and McCullough that and even up to that point in the 40s, there's still no machine that really does this.
Right.
It's until you get into sort of IBM producing machines with a guy named Rosenblatt who creates perceptrons. Anyway, like all that, I go into like not only that explain that, like how do you get from Aristotle to a machine that can tell the difference on a punch card whether the numbers on a punch card are left or right, and build a category of left ones versus right ones, right? That was sort of the original implementation of a neural network, which was, and feed it a bunch of IBM card reader cards, and it tells you which ones, how many are on the left and how many are on the right, right? That's like the original first implementation, and then how do you get from there to AlphaGo, right? Like, but so yeah, no, it was a phenomenal experience doing that. In fact, what I've actually done is I've actually built now. So I live in a small college town, and I was asked to create a extended learning course on the history of AI. And so now going back through it, I've created an 8-week course, mostly retired professors and really highly intellectual people, but not necessarily technical people. And now I'm going to turn that into a course, because it's like all the stuff that I sort of missed in my book now. And this is the advantage of self-publishing is I don't have anybody's rights to sort of augment the book.
That's awesome. So, and you can negotiate the rights for other languages and other ecosystems. Right?
Yeah, that's true too. That's really cool.
Good stuff.
But Yeah, no. So I think going back to the sort of the Java, the experience again, the thing and so your point about like the abstractions have been around forever, and that's a really
Yeah.
good point.
Not
So
my
that
point. I
sort of
stole it.
yeah, no, but it lends itself to the Jevons paradox working. Um,
Yeah.
I just the one thing I sort of get a little bit sort of shady on is the argument of just saying don't worry about it, blank Jevons
Nope.
paradox.
Right.
History doesn't always repeat itself. And so I sort of worry. I mean, we talked about this before the podcast. Like, I'm 60, gonna be 67 in about a week, 2 weeks.
Wow.
But and that's a whole sort of under itself story. But like right now, if I was in my 30s, I'd be scared shitless.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the the only way through is to become very good at something, and like I said, I don't know that there's a role for people who are um, who like me actually. I skim the water of so many different topics, and the only place I've found where the AI has not been particularly good is in my expertise, the one and only
Yeah,
expertise.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Because by definition, these models are trained on the broad corpus of work on the internet, which is always not every bit of code can be the best code. That's how that works. It's
Well,
internet. It's
that's another
statistics.
question I have too. Early on, I was wondering about this, and I haven't. I was going to explore it a little bit, but I could sort of in the long list. I'm the classic dog squirrel, squirrel, right?
Yeah.
But I wonder, like one of the things I wanted to pursue early was, the corpus of data that's out there that these train on is not
Yeah.
necessarily Java,
Right. Which is a huge problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wanted. Yeah. So can you walk me through that a little more detail?
Well, so funny you should ask. We've noticed that too, and in fact, it's quite problematic. So you ask, it's a vicious cycle, right? So you go looking for how to do AI. Well, then you find some what's the right word? Python enjoyer posting on Reddit, right?
Python enjoyer. Yeah. Surely not a professional enterprise developer.
Whatever.
Fair enough.
and then of course the models train on Reddit. So now what are they more apt to recommend when next asked about how to do AI? Well,
that's right.
So, and the other thing is that these models have become quite good at the SRE tests, right? The SRE benchmarks. These benchmarks are from like 3 years ago, and they favor
basically.
Yeah, and these benchmarks favor tasks in Python. So the models have learned the test, right? And they've cheated. So now when you ask these models, hey, how well do you perform? It's like 70, 80%, something like that. They're amazing at these particular learned SRE tests from 3 years ago. But then you give them to the same modern, give them modern tasks in Java, and they go from being genius engineers down to like neophytes that haven't passed a boot camp yet, right? This is not a fair test. You're not a genius one day and then a failing student the next day. That's not how that works. So we the Spring team, we worked with JetBrains. We have a product called Spring Bench, which is a set of benchmarks, modern workflows, to help define what it looks like for these models to do well at Java, right? And other languages besides just Python, right? Because there is a problem there. These tools are clearly quite gifted if they're well trained, but they're not well trained on so many other ecosystems.
And I fell trapped to this too, as you say that, because I did, I early on. So I got very interested in SweetBench about 2 years ago, right? Yeah. Which is the sort of that general software engineering benchmarks, right? And you're right. It's like almost all. Like originally, it was exclusively Python based, right? And I even though I knew fundamentally that there wasn't a lot of corpus of data in the trained models, because I mean, think about it. If you're Capital One and you got 20,000 Java developers, those models are not seeing any of that data, right? Like so think about all the sort of Java that again, speaking to the choir, but or preaching to the choir, but the is not it's just not available. So it's a lopsided conversation. But I fell into the thing too, like in my presentations, trying to I'm all over the map here. So you may be sick, I'm not sick, but I'm still over the map. Which is, the only time I quote Gartner is when it just absolutely nails something I want to say.
Right.
But when I'm trying to make the point about how AI is influencing, software engineering, I use the SWE bench quite often of, my God, look where it was in August, look where it is
Right.
now. And making that sort of like that mistake of not sort of like pointing out what you just pointed out, which is there's a terrible sort of bias in that model.
And, yep. And the other thing I noticed, the other tweet I saw the other day, from this one I can remember, it's David K. Piano on Twitter. He said the following, which it's not, it's just a inefficiency, but it is kind of interesting. He points out, quote unquote, what's funny is now LLMs are coding like cavemen or women, like manually renaming every occurrence instead of just using built-in IDE refactor tools, manually refactoring or manually writing package.jsons or setting up a framework boilerplates line by line. Tokens are free. We never had to do that manually. So basically, the way it's working is, inefficient compared to what developers can do. But it does it's automatic, so it's no stress, but it's just a slower route to the same result.
I know we're running out of time, but that's another sort of question I'd get in your opinion. And by the way, this is me interviewing you. Sorry, pal. I worry about the dependency mess. Before AI, the library dependency mess, right? From a DevSecOps perspective or an IT risk perspective, right? Like that's, there's so much meat there of, the struts 2 stuff, right? Like when you sort of drill down and you look at it. But I mean, I remember the guy at Sonatype, a friend of mine at Sonatype, was showing like they could decouple all the libraries associated with that sort of Jakarta, right? And it was like, and I'm a little bit exaggerating, but like there were like modules in there or libraries in there, like Bob's library, Bob's
right,
but that runs the enterprise, right?
Right.
And so we have this sort of other don't we have this other and terrible problem is that not only are we building code on the corpus of data,
right,
this code is not necessarily looking to rewrite that sort of 15, 20-year corpus of libraries. Because
it can't, and it doesn't know what it doesn't know what good looks like until it's seen everything, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the worst part.
Right.
I would just prefer it stuck to the good, but it doesn't. That's the thing. It also doesn't know about recency. So there's good and there's also recent, and the models by definition aren't good at either of those categories. I want good code and I want the most recent code. By definition, most people aren't using the best code and they're not using the most recent code. That's just how statistics work,
That's right. They're going to use whatever's mostly abundantly used, right?
Right, which may be an anti-pattern. Often is,
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. Do we solve anything today or no?
Well, no.
That wasn't the goal, but yeah.
No, but okay. I found the tweet to which I was referencing earlier. Quote unquote. This is the same human, David K. Piano. He says, "Okay, let's be real. Writing code was never the hard part. Understanding the problem, making the trade-offs, knowing what and what not to build, etc. LLMs made the typing 10 times faster, but it didn't make the thinking 10 times easier. Also, let's not pretend we were writing code in Notepad before LLMs. We had frameworks, generators, libraries, IntelliSense, snippets, autocomplete, Stack Overflow, RIP, and an entire ecosystem of abstractions that designed to make writing code not that tedious." And I kind of, for now, I think I agree with that. I think, it's being borne out by that thing I mentioned earlier. People are actually taking more time with AI to produce the same results as they were earlier. I don't know, but I think you're right. I think we do have a trajectory we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think the other thing I think a lot about is sort of the systems themselves. Obviously, it'd be a long time before, some of the things that I love that you pointed out is some of the that benchmark from MCP, languages
Right.
of MCP, right? Like that was glaring. Like there's no argument against that, right? The 62%, I did do some digging on the 60% of the enterprises use Java. It was in the survey.
Self-selection.
It was picked multiple languages too. So that's in other words. But the performance, the strong point you made is that to run right now, to run enterprise grade like DoD, or I'm in a bank and I'm funds, tier 0 services, right? I'm not going to take any chances on 5 kids writing Go code.
Nope.
But the
Well, not to
question
mention,
though,
if you're a
go ahead.
startup, I mean, you've got to keep an eye on your spend rate, right? Because you don't have
Yeah.
AWS tokens to,
Well,
going out the door. So I wouldn't use it there either. I wouldn't there's no context where I want to burn money and get an inferior result. It
that's
just
right.
seems like a
Well,
bad
but the
idea.
question becomes like, when does
Yeah.
it become like I used the analogy lately, like when I pick up my phone and I call you Josh, right?
Yeah,
Like
I love that.
I don't worry about anything. So I have like, is there a world coming? And I think the answer is yes. I just don't know when. Where like all the sort of things about software matter as much as it matters everything beyond me hitting your sort of name on my iPhone. And in other words, the only expectation I have at that point is, can
Yeah.
I get to you in a reasonable time? Is the quality of the voice proper? And even in this world, if it doesn't work, I usually realize, okay, there's something going on with the tower. I'll just try in 15 minutes from now. In other words, I
Right.
don't worry anything about all the engineering. And is there a world where software gets to the ROI of how software gets created is like the sausage making behind what you do when you make a telephone call? And then will it matter at that point? I mean, again, like, I'm thinking very meta these days, maybe because I'm
Sure.
old, but I don't know
Well,
if that makes sense or.
Only the rarest of the people, the rarest few people in the world can even contemplate these questions. You, no doubt, are one of them, and it's for that reason that I'm so glad you got to join me for today. We should definitely do a like a little hackathon or something. We can sit and chat privately. But this,
Yeah.
like, I can't wait to read your book, my friend. That is,
Oh, I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on it. So.
and your quantum computing one too, because I have zero.
Well, that
zero
one's not
sense.
going to be out. That won't be out for another year. So probably, but.
Yeah. Sure. It'll be out when it gets out. I mean,
That's right. Yeah. We all know how that works. Yeah. You want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right?
Right. Exactly. No book survives first contact with me.
Brilliant.
My friend, God, I'm so happy. I learned I have more food for thought, and I have now a book. Because I'm sick. I'm actually sitting here at home, like sniffling and wheezing and stuff. So I'm gonna read your book.
Oh no, what happened here? I don't know what.
What is that? Did a book just fall on you? What?
Hey.
What's happening?
Oh yeah, hold on. We'll have to delete this, but what the hell is going on here? Okay. Somewhere a podcast of mine got started. All right.
Oh.
Well, all right.
I can't hear it.
The thing you can't hear it?
No.
All right. Okay.
My friend?
All right. There we go.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for this. First of all, are you on the internet? Do you want to be found, and where can people find you?
Yeah. What in the hell?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can't. Okay. Can you hear all that nonsense going on?
Nothing. No. I can't hear a thing.
Good.
Are you on the internet?
Then we're good. We're good. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Where are you on the internet? Where can people find you? Sorry, are you in the internet? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, John Willis. If you do Google John Willis and DevOps on LinkedIn, I pretty much live on LinkedIn primarily. So that's why I think John Willis Atlanta is the actual name. So LinkedIn is where you sort of get everywhere. You can find my author portal on Amazon with all my published books, but LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. Yeah.
LinkedIn has turned into quite the little place,
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's really the perfect focal point for.
Yeah.
So,
all right, my friend.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Well, good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Good.
Thanks to everybody else for joining. Goodbye.
Yeah. All right. Take care.